Thanks so much for watching. It's really important that if you like our content, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let us know what matches you'd love to see next right here on YouTube with Alpha X. Spawning in the bottom right of Blackburn LE is our red Protoss player, playing from the North American states and Team Tang Esports. This is Neeb. And spawning in the bottom left, it's our blue Zerg player, affectionately known as the King in the North, and a former BlizzCon champion for NC Sports. This is SERRAL. So once again, this is a replay cast from the TSL7. This was in the round of 16. Both players still in the winner's bracket at this point. Of course, this is because this is a replay cast, all of these results have been completed. So this cast will be done completely spoiler-free. So you are welcome to enjoy it from beginning to end. But you can also check Wikipedia if you want special information about how these matches unfolded and more information about other matches that took place in this event. But of course, both players come into this matchup with pretty hefty careers on board. Neeb, of course, one of the North American phenoms, being a Protoss player that has been rather strong throughout his entire career, finding lots of success not only in WCS and ESL, but also making it very deep in the GSL as well, being one of the only foreigners to go deep in a GSL tournament. So, of course, SERRAL needs no introduction here, as he is going to start harassing the front of this wall here on Blackburn. Now, Neeb is not overreacting to this. This is just a very small amount of pressure here. The probe has been able to really spot out the incoming force here and realizes that there isn't any follow-up behind this. So SERRAL just trying to put down a little bit of pressure, see if he can get opponents to blink. But Neeb, unfortunately for SERRAL, just not going to really overreact here. The second gateway is going to be replaced so that there is a gap in the wall. The Adept should be able to hold that down just fine as Neeb decides to try and move across the map. Now, we've seen SERRAL play with some pretty tight execution in ZVP as of late, really getting confident with his Queen Walk timings. On Blackburn, though, that Queen Walk timing ends up being a little bit more awkward and kind of hard to do with the deacceleration zones kind of plopped down in the middle. There's also plenty of these rock formations that make it difficult to really maneuver your army across the map unless there are Nidus networks brought into play. So we'll have to see what SERRAL decides to bring in here. But Neeb already moving into a PVZ favorite, opening up with the Void Ray here. Going to try and clean up a little bit of the scouting information. Back behind this, though, it is going to be an Oracle follow-up with more Adepts on the ground. So it seems as if Neeb might be trying to opt for a bit more ground pressure here at the beginning outsets of game number 1. Third base already on site for SERRAL, as well as he just continues to expand. Not going to take any chances here throwing down the Spore Crawler in his main and his natural, which is going to allow those queens to be able to stay aggressive out towards the front and deflect any possible oracles that might be zooming on in, and that does happen to be the case here in the main base. Now that oracle just going to try and position itself on the backside, and it does try to throw down a stasis ward that is going to be successful, but SERRAL is going to get away mostly damage free here. The queen actually does get caught out at the backside, but not overwhelmingly damage that SERRAL has to try and deal with. He is going to throw down that Roach Warren. I'll be a little bit late on the timing. So far, not a whole lot of action between these two players, just a little bit back and forth. It is going to be continued ground progression here for Neeb as he does go into that Twilight Council. Oh, okay, those So Deft are going to try and come up here, but great block by those Zerglings, wrapping those around and not allowing those to get into the mineral line. That's going to keep things incredibly close-handed for SERRAL as he just continues to work his way up. Just going to take his lair. He's throwing down the evolution chamber. There aren't a whole lot of upgrades that go along with this opening here for SERRAL. He's going to take that 4th base at the gold base location. That's going to more than likely prompt some good production, as that extra mineral output is going to be crucial for SERRAL as he tries to boil everything up. But a 3rd base already down for Neeb. SERRAL is going to be able to spot that. And he knows that that will be incoming. More stasis wards, getting a little bit more here, shutting down the gas production at that 3rd base. Just in a little bit. The 2nd Oracle is not going to be as successful. SERRAL staying on top of his game so far, but it looks like a Spire going to be on the way. He's actually dropping it down at the 3rd base location. At this point, it's not really something that he wants to necessarily hide. Just getting it down and in a position to do some more great things. Now, SERRAL does want to try and keep an eye on Neeb. If the Protoss is left unchecked, I mean, a lot of things can happen here. It could easily set up into a 4th base scenario, get those really strong late-game units build up into whatever ground army or sky army he'd like to do. So SERRAL needs to start making some actions happen here, so Neeb doesn't just go completely unchecked, because it does seem like right now Robotics Bay on the way. Neeb is going to opt in for some of those more powerful ground units. Disruptors really good in PvZ right now, but Colossi have not been a terrible choice as of late either. But it is going to be Disruptors here. Disruptors could be an interesting choice going up against the Spire tech of SERRAL. Right now, it seems as if Neeb is getting ready to do a push, but no information on that Spire just yet. Stalker count keeping relatively high will not be a bad thing. That will deal pretty decently against mutas, but as this muta count continues to grow, so too will the threat of SERRAL being able to overwhelm this large ground army. At this point, there is only one Stargate, so a Phoenix transition could happen, but it would be rather slow, and it would take a long time to really get brought up into place. And I think SERRAL's doing a pretty decent job of selling the fact that there are not any air units coming, but now, finally, a hallucinated Phoenix is going to reveal the fact that that Spire is on the way, and Neeb got a chance to look really closely, saw the opportunity to check out the incoming upgrades as well. But here come those mutas right across the map. The Stalkers are going to be in good position, though. Do we have Blink? Yes, Blink is available, so those Stalkers will be able to find a pretty decent amount of damage, but this is going to be SERRAL's opportunity to overwhelm with his ground force. Those Stalkers have all been placed at the natural and the ramp in between the natural and the main. So with this ground force coming up to the high side of the map, that's going to make things very, very complicated here for our red Protoss player. This 4th base is going to be rather exposed. Only a couple of cannons are not going to be enough to really deal with this, and suddenly those probes are caught completely out of position. A Disruptor is going to come on in here and find a little bit of damage, but that's not going to be near enough to hold all of this force off. Where are those mutas? Mutas are swinging around right now. Only 6 workers have been caught so far. One Disruptor going to tack down a lot of damage onto that Ravager, and SERRAL's forces will have to retreat. If we take a look at that battle report, the battle report so far kind of hanging tight between the two players, but SERRAL's going to get a little bit more advantage here as those mutas do find a mineral line. 4 more workers are going to get picked off, and now this 4th base is going to be completely exposed, but that's because Neeb is pushing across the map. Banelings have been brought into the mix here to help deal some additional damage, but trading against Stalkers is not going to be as effective for those Banelings. So it will be a decent amount of response, but not necessarily a decent amount of damage in return. But the trades are almost dead even. SERRAL is just absolutely inclined to try and make that go further and further. 21 probes have been picked off. Now, from the battle report, the exchange seems to be about the same because we're just talking about minerals and gas lost. But in reality, losing 23 of those probes can hold the economy back by a significant amount. And if we take a look at that income advantage, can see very clearly SERRAL secures a giant amount of economic advantage here, as he is going to be able to try and overwhelm his opponent here. He's maxed out. He's going to try and break up some of these rocks to make this movement a little bit more powerful for that ground army. Oh, great stasis trap, actually catching one of those lings. Oh, a second one actually getting snapped as well, but that one worked out a little bit better in his favor. Only catching lings, though. That was a pretty decent exchange here for SERRAL. Neeb going to try and pop some of these banelings, but not quite getting that disruptor shot just far enough out. So those banelings will live to bust another day. He's going to try and come in and cause a little bit of chaos up in that fourth base location, but they will have to fly on by. But not before they pick off a few more of those workers. How many workers have been killed off so far? 36 in total so far. A very, very good amount of damage for SERRAL as he tries to continue to get those mutas more and more damage value. He is going to go up to a greater spire as well, so seeing an opportunity to get into Broodlords will be an opportunity for SERRAL as he transpires forward, but we do see +3 on the way. Adrenal Glands just now finishing up. We're going to see Ultras as well. Gosh, this is such a gas-heavy army. I mean, he is taking all of his gases, and he's had the gases here at that fourth for a very long time. His gas production is going to be a necessity as he tries to find a way to deal with this. But the Broodlords will be a good response to those disruptors. The disruptors not finding the damage that they need to. Those banelings continue pouring on forward. The shields are not enough, and those force fields will not be good enough to hold on. But the baneling run by the fourth base will secure SERRAL's attack there, taking down 24 probes, continuing to bury Neeb further and further into the ground. A fleet beacon is on the way for Neeb as he tries to transition into something that's going to be able to deal damage against this. These mutas have just gone completely unchecked throughout the entirety of this mid-game. These Stalkers have tried everything in their power to shut these down, but have not found a whole lot of success. So it seems as if a couple extra Stargates might be producing some Phoenix, or may even just go right into carriers, as that fleet beacon is now complete. We do have Infestor upgrades coming in as well from the Infestation Pit, which will add a good amount of damage. And I think SERRAL might actually just bulldoze this over. This is kind of a big last stand here for Neeb. Wants to try and hold on to this fourth base location as much as he possibly can, as SERRAL's going to try and just take the banelings forward. He knows they're not going to trade out super effectively against those Stalkers, so draws a little bit of fire back while those Roaches deal some good damage at the front, and buys mutas time to get more and more economic damage. These mutas are the heroes of this game number one. They have just gotten so much damage done. SERRAL's just going to try and remax here with a giant ground army. You know that the Zerg player's feeling really good when you're going up against Mass Stalker and your thought process is, you know what? You want to be really good in this army? Ultralisks. Coming in for more run-bys. I don't think we've gone through the last, 5 minutes of this game without seeing a multiple probe kill counter. Stunning play here by SERRAL as he just overwhelms his opponent. Here come the Ultras. It doesn't matter that there are Archons. It doesn't matter that there are Stalkers. It only matters that there is an overwhelming amount of SERRAL. And this is the SERRAL that we come to expect, that we've known and loved since 2018. The Banelings come crashing on forward, and they pave a way for SERRAL to dominate in game number one in this best-of-5 series. Now, game number 2 takes us over to Juggernaut here in this best-of-5 between SERRAL and Neeb. SERRAL with an overwhelming game number 1 strategy, and he finds himself on the second map in this pool pick that could offer just a similar opportunity to overwhelm Neeb. However, Juggernaut over the course of this map season has become more and more powerful for Protoss players as they try to utilize those void rays to really dive in deep into main bases. A lot of times we see those voids that'll just like pop in right outside of the main. They'll mass up, dive in, grab whatever tech buildings they possibly can, and just dip on out. So we'll have to see if Neeb is going to go for maybe more of an air guided approach here in map number 2. Neeb actually was doing a pretty decent job of blocking this base going down at the natural, but not going to be able to close that out. Instead, across the map, Neeb is going to focus on his own transition here, getting a Nexus down first before the Cybernetics Core, which on this tall map should be really easy to get away with. And I hate to even use the term get away with. It's just a good way to open up on this tall map. So Neeb will get a decent amount of scouting information, and so will SERRAL. SERRAL's going to start working away on these probes. A decent amount of micro, though, happening here. We'll try to keep that probe alive. Will it, though? Yeah, that probe is on borrowed time. Should be able to clean this up, but absolutely will see that Stargate coming down. I know that Zergling is going to try and lay around as long as humanly possible. Oh, the jukes. Not quite. But it is going to be a Stargate opener once again here in map number 2. Neeb going to try and find a way to capitalize on this map opening. Will be a Void Ray. Now, SERRAL actually doing his part here, sensing that this is going to end up being the case. It doesn't matter what air unit pops out. It's going to murder those overlords. So pulling the overlords back far enough that it's at least going to be a possibility that it can be saved. So good forward thinking here by the Finnish Zerg player. All those adepts are getting dangerously low here. Oh, they're going to shade right on top of the other set of queens. So one of those adepts will go down. I mean, it does trade out 6 Zerglings, but that's definitely not what those adepts were there for. I think it's going to be difficult for sure for the American Protoss player to really pull a fast one over on his opponent. SERRAL's just the quintessential scouter and knower of things. I mean, it's how many times have we seen in key pivotal situations a Zergling will just slip its way through, greases itself up from the spawning pool, and just zips on into the main base and sees every piece of technology, all at the cost of what, 25 minerals? It's just outstanding. So Neeb's going to have to get extra creative here if he wants to put on a decent amount of pressure. Now, an Oracle did pop out. I mentioned it didn't matter what came out of the Stargate. And, of course, naturally, I was proven incorrect, as I forgot one of the core units of the Protoss army right now just doesn't shoot air units. Like, what was I thinking? But I do think that the stasis traps will be good, especially if Neeb can pull a fast one off on his opponent. He's going to be able to snap that because of the 2 adepts over onto the third base location. Joke's on SERRAL. He put the bait and switch on the opposite side of the map, and now that's going to allow Neeb to deal a little bit of damage here as he gets those oracles up together. 6 of those workers do end up going down with a decent amount of damage as well, and Neeb's going to continue to find more and more pressure here. These adepts are getting a lot of damage done. 8 workers have gone down so far. I think that will finally get cleaned up. But that gives Neeb a lot of good advantage and momentum here in the 6-minute mark of this game number 2. Now, SERRAL's going to need to try and find a way to put some more damage down as he continues to lose more and more of those workers. 12 workers have gone down to the hands of those oracles as he tries to find a way to position himself. Oh my gosh, look at those queens go. The queens just zoom through those acceleration zones. But back at home, the defense is flawless for Neeb. Neeb has a has a Void Ray, and he has 6 gateways on the way as well. That's going to make 8 gate production here for our Protoss player. At this point in the game, this is a really good spot for Neeb. He's already sitting at 66 workers. He's a little bit ahead of his opponent. That income advantage graph looks very, very nice for the Protoss player. Losing one of those oracles is not a great idea, but not much he can do there. Oh, looks like we had a little bit of a pause in the gameplay, but of course, since we're on the replay, we don't feel any of the effects of it. We just see a whole bunch of text all at once. So 4th base already plopped down here for Neeb, but more than likely we should start seeing some big production cycles happening for our Protoss player. He's got the gateway count that he's looking for. I know admittedly he's using some of it as SimCity, but I mean, taking advantage of the opportunity as much as he can would be very, very appropriate. But he's just taking the opportunity to continue probing up here. He's up to 77 probes. He's going to try and get that 4th base completely saturated. That's going to offer him a lot of options here. Oh, but he's got to start being aware of what his opponent's doing with these swarm hosts that are coming out. Now, do we have any swarm hosts on the map just yet? No. As long as, yeah, Neeb has not spotted the, setup just yet. So Nidus Network is still a bit concealed. But the question is, where is it going to pop out? Keep an eye open for that charge on the way, as well as +2 ground weapons on top of it. It looks like it is just going to be brought forward here. The Swarmos are actually going to just retreat from it, not really going to pop out and in. The first wave of Locusts is going to come down as well. Oh, there's already a stasis ward in position. But it's going to be a great drop here as these armies are going to exchange out across the map. Decent amount of Stalkers trying to find some damage on top of these Ravagers and Queens, but those should get mostly whittled away here. Great blink micro as he tries to stutter himself back, and he gets a reasonable trade here. Does take a final Queen there in the end. It's a fair amount. No, it didn't actually pick up the Queen. Must have just been a Ravager. It was a big unit. It was a chonky boy. A pretty decent hold so far on the 4th base Nexus, not really finding a ton of damage against those Locusts. I think it's going to be the second wave that might be a bit more difficult to deal with, especially if the ground force is going to try and introduce itself at the same time. Stasis Trap does grab a few of those Locusts on the left-hand side, and that will limit the amount of damage that happens here. Neeb is going to try and find a transition opportunity while he still can. He's going to throw down that Fleet Beacon. The Swarm Hosts continue rotating around, and every time those Swarm Hosts don't find a major amount of damage, it's a great opportunity for Neeb as he tries to keep himself ahead of his opponent here in this second map, and he's doing a pretty decent job so far. But he's stuck on 4 base, just being patient. Another wave of Locusts coming in as well. Those Lings actually trying to find a little bit of damage there. Good blinks back and forth. Oh, that Disruptor actually finds itself out front, but it's going to be able to be used defensively, shutting down a majority of those Locusts before anything major gets tapped off the top. But SERRAL already trying to secure a good control of the map. I mean, he's got a ton of creep spread moving around, mostly due to those Nidus worms helping to push things forward. Finally, now we see Neeb trying to take a 5th base location, but SERRAL should be able to capitalize on this. He's got Banelings, he's got Baneling speed. That Stasis Trap not finding the damage that it needs, but the giant blink forward should be enough to try and push this back. So losing a few of those forward cannons and pylons not going to make any major difference here. Oh, a missed opportunity to try and knock down those Banes, but instead trying to find those Roaches, and that's going to leave these units rather exposed. Good amount of blinking happening here, though, but another Baneling run by going to get into the natural, losing 16 of those workers off the top of that engagement here. This is SERRAL slowly starting to grab some advantage over his opponent. Now we're going to see those Nidus worms start coming into play. Locusts are still being brought into the fray as well, so now they will finally start getting a little bit of advantage here as those disruptors get picked off. More workers are going down as well, and now a Nidus worm in the backside of the main is going to cause a little bit of a distraction, but not really get anything major done at this point. Greater Spire being morphed in, as well as more of those tier 3 units. We have the Hive already completed. SERRAL just everywhere on the map, and this is classic SERRAL play. He constantly brings aggression to his opponent, makes his opponent have to micro multiple things. Imagine if SERRAL had chosen to play Terran. What would this world have looked like? Oh, that is going to be a dead Nexus here. Finding value with those swarm hosts still here at the 12-minute mark is going well. More Banelings compiling on it. All the probes are getting piled up. 15 end up going down, and Neeb's supply is plummeting here. 133 to 183. He's trying to get his transition going into carriers, but as he loses more and more of that income, he's going to find it very difficult to actually make that transition happen. Now, despite that, SERRAL still is only now trying to work on his 5th base. He spent a lot of time on 4-base economy, which is not going to give him the world's greatest income advantage. It does still lean in his favor, but SERRAL hasn't done everything he needs to really put this game away just yet. A transition into carriers could still be deadly, especially against a largely swarm host Roach Lingbane army. Those Banelings continue to be deadly. Oh, this base is being sandwiched by both sides by Roaches and Ravagers. Banelings continue piling on in. 22 more probes go down, and SERRAL forces his opponent to tap out. Already going up 2-0 in this best of 5. He finds himself on match point here in the round of 16 of the TSL7. We head on to game number 3. Map number 3 takes us here to Oxide as we boil up a match point game here for SERRAL in the round of 16. Neeb's going to get the head start here on SERRAL by getting the block off at that natural location. So Oxide's a pretty good map to get that block on. If Neeb decided he wanted to go into Adept pressure and play, you could very easily do a lot of shading back and forth. The distance is pretty reasonable, all things considered, if he wants to put in some decent work over here and immediately blink back and forth. A lot of times we see Protoss players lean into that type of aggression and harassment if they can force that Zerg player out to the 3rd base location for their 2nd base. We'll have to see what Neeb wants to do, but Neeb's going to have to dig deep into his well if he wants to try and execute the return sweep against his opponent. And trying to reverse sweep SERRAL, it's not impossible. We've seen it before. It's going to be very difficult against the Finnish phenom from NC Sports. Now, SERRAL's going to have to work on his creep spread here as he is getting his queens in production. Got a Stargate opening once again. So it looks like Neeb's not going to try and lean too hard into the ground opening, at least not at this point. So it does end up delaying this this base just a little bit. Queen is on a mission. Her goal, should she choose to accept it, is to go spread that creep. I think also, most importantly, this queen's going to be super helpful in protecting these drones. Very useful if adepts were to show up at the front door, or even just an oracle. It would be able to save a little bit of money on having to build a spore crawler. Every mineral counts here at the opening onset of the game, but it is going to be a void array opener for Neeb. SERRAL's going to be able to spot that. It is going to cost him the Overlord, but it's a fair scout all the way around. Now, with Ling Speed finishing up, will be a little bit of map control that can be brought into SERRAL's court, should he choose to accept it. But it seems like right now, he's just going to lay back, continue to macro up, and wait to see what his opponent wants to try and bring across the map. Is Neeb going to continue on in that Stargate pressure, or is he going to pivot? I mean, Neeb is a pretty cheeky player, but he is going to continue on forward with his Stargate play. He is going to drop down the Fleet Beacon. I love this adaptation here. We are going to get that second Stargate up. More than likely, this is probably just going to be speed voids. Typically, if you're going to do something really, really bizarre, like Proxy Tempest, you proxy it out on the map. It's right in the name. But we could also possibly see carriers as well. I mean, what do we have for gas count? I mean, he's got all the gas he could ever want off a 2 base. And a very early carrier build. Could be devastating against the Zerg player from Ents Esports. Ooh. Now, SERRAL, again, SERRAL's the king of scouting information. It is going to be carriers. What is SERRAL going to be able to see here? He sees absolutely nothing at the front side of the base. And these Void Rays are going to make it almost impossible. I guess the singular Void Ray is going to make it almost impossible for him to try and sneak in some scouting information. Now, he did not see the third. He didn't see it? That Zergling ran right next to it. That actually could be really frustrating here for Neeb. SERRAL might not be aware that there is, in fact, a third base on the way, which could lead SERRAL to believe, like, oh, this is just going to be a standard macro timing, that base going down at a pretty reasonable opportunity. But instead, yeah, it's going to prompt SERRAL to really focus on keeping that scouting information going here. He's got those Zerglings on the patrol paths to watch for any of those air units that might be coming out. Oh, this is actually going to be a good catch on those Adepts. Lings are going to be able to pressure that front door, and that should provide... Oh, no, he didn't see it. You have got to be kidding me. Neeb is going to get across the map here without being spotted. These are the sneakiest carriers in the history of all Protoss units. Oh, now it finally happens here, but the carriers are already across the map, so what do you do as the Finnish player? He's going to go into Hydralist, which will be the right choice here. He's already got +1 missile on the way, but at this point now, what do you have to really deal with this? There are a fair number of queens here, 7 queens, and repositioning Spore Crawlers will be helpful as well. So this actually will be an okay position for SERRAL to try and hold, at least for right now. But the longer that this game goes on and the more carriers that start popping out, SERRAL's going to have a larger response. And it's going to have to be more than just Hydras and +1 missile, especially if these queens start getting worked away here. The transfuse is not quite on point. Neeb also doing a good job of going after the queens with the largest amount of energy. The defense back at home, great sentry holds here. We'll keep that wall intact, and SERRAL's not going to be able to punish the carrier pressure that's happening here across the map. Oh, now we do see one carrier getting very far forward. It is going to take a lot of damage, but it's just going to be a bait. These queens are going to be all exposed, and SERRAL's going to slowly lose a lot of this queen count here. What was traded out there? 6 queens for the cost of infestors. Or interceptors, excuse me. So this is going to be a dead 4th base here. Hydras are going to be added in, and that's going to be helpful. But once again, those Hydras are not going to be able to survive very long against those interceptors. And this base is going to get taken down. The interceptor count is just way too high at this point. The queens are going to get worked on as well. And as the Hydras try to stutter step their way back and pick off those infestors, that's going to leave the queens completely exposed here. There's no harassment out on the opposite side of the map. Once these queens and the Hydras have been thinned out, these carriers are going to get so much damage done. But what can SERRAL expect to do at this point? He doesn't have a whole lot really to respond to this. Sure, he's going to be able to lock in that 4th base, and he's not even going to be able to do that. Charge lots are going to clean that up. That 4th base is going to be protected for the most part. going from bad to worse here for our blue Zerg player. Neeb finding an opportunity and an avenue to really secure himself here in this game. More carriers on the way to help reinforce the 4 that are already dealing a lot of very good damage. But now finally we see the Hydra count getting just high enough to really shut down those interceptors. But those are going to have to be able to stay back at home. They're not going to be able to push out across the map. They can't afford to let those carriers deal additional damage to SERRAL's economy. So Neeb going to be able to buy himself a lot of time. He gets a couple of Archons here built up at that 4th base location. There will be some cannons and shield batteries dropped down as well. And as Neeb is able to continue fortifying this position, he continues to take further steps forward in this game. Hydraling Bane is powerful, but he really needs something to deal with the potential overwhelming ground force that will be building up here for Neeb. Neeb already working on his +2 ground weapon upgrades. There are additional carriers being brought in, and this is kind of a death ball army that's going to be difficult to deal with. A nice little surround by those banelings, but it's not going to be quite enough. Great force fields will divide this Hydra army in half, and there's just way too much here for those Hydras to fire at. Neeb has started the process. He's taken back 1 game on SERRAL and forces a game number 4 in this best-of-5 series. Map number 4 has been forced by Neeb. It takes us to 2,000 atmospheres. SERRAL's still on a match point situation here against his American Protoss opponent. But 2,000 atmospheres is going to end up shaping up to be a bit more of a standard play map here. I mean, a lot more opportunities to play a really good timing attack. The fact that this map doesn't have any major gimmicks could possibly work out into SERRAL's favor here. Really nice attack paths. But also, that does make things a little bit easier here for Neeb. Neeb's got a lot of good defense points that he can work with, and could be a really nice way to even out this series if Neeb can find the right play to dial in. But ultimately, what's going to be happening is Neeb trying to continue that momentum. Really good timing and really good luck. And let's be real honest about it. Getting those carriers across the map before they were scouted. It'll be up to Neeb to try and find a bit more of that advantage over his opponent. But SERRAL's not one to really let those types of plays happen to him more than once. So SERRAL going to do a diligent job of scouting here. We'll be able to see that Stargate opening once again from Neeb. Oh, that Zergling. That Zergling thought about it. It thought about getting in there for the scout, but not going to end up happening. SERRAL going to take a bit of a forward third here. Is that going to lead into a bit more aggressive play out of SERRAL? Oh, Neeb. Neeb. Where is it? Oh, there it is. A fleet beacon right down in the natural. This is shameless. Oh, Neeb. I mean, he made it work once before. What's to say he can't make it work again? But this is going to be a different build order here. 2 gases missing at the natural probably means it's not going to be a giant push into carriers like it was in game number 3. So then the question becomes, what does Neeb want to do with this fleet beacon? Are we going to see Flux Veins brought out into speed voids? No. It's going to be Tempest. Oh, this is a special type of aggressive here. Neeb's going to try and make a proxy Tempest work, but without the proxy and without an additional Stargate to help that Tempest population. But more than likely, Neeb's not going to be able to afford that many Tempests all at once. He does have his 3rd and 4th gas down now, but it's just going to be one. It's going to be one to... Oh, he's trying to make SERRAL blink. I love it. This actually could just elicit an all-in response from SERRAL. Oh, this is not going to be... Yeah, Neeb's not going to get the same kind of luck. SERRAL's got to be going, wait, what? A Tempest? Excuse me? So if you're this Tempest, what is your target? Your target should not be the Zerglings. For sure. Should start to be these Queens, but the Queens are going to get right underneath of that Tempest. It's going to immediately get knocked down. In fact, it takes a lot of hull damage as well. I mean, that's a great way to start this defense here by SERRAL. Limiting the amount that this Tempest can really maneuver and deal damage is going to be crucial. Behind it is going to be Void Rays as a follow-up, and the Overlord is going to be able to spot that. So now we finally see those Flux Veins going down. That's what I anticipated Neeb going into at this point, but looks like he's just trying to keep his opponent on his toes. It did buy Neeb the opportunity and position to get that 3rd base set down on the ground. There is a shield battery, but no photon cannons at this point, so the protection is not going to be entirely there. In fact, I don't even think there's a forge. Yeah, there's no cannons available. So the 4th base is going to get plopped into place here for SERRAL, as he is going to position and maneuver with these Lings. What is going to be the response for SERRAL right now? He hasn't overly committed into one path or the other. He's going to have Hydras. Hydraling Bane can be good if the air units stay in small enough numbers, and right now, this is not an overwhelming air force. 4 Void Rays is not difficult to try and play against here, especially with the queen count that SERRAL has. He's got 8 of those queens, 8 queens against 4 of those Void Rays. That should be more than enough, but a lot of these air units are going to start kicking into overdrive as +1 air weapons will be allowed to work up here. Now, Hydras getting added into the mix in large amounts will be very, very good. 11 of those Hydras on the way. Voids are going to rotate around the top side here. This Tempest getting dangerously low. The Great Queen Stutter Step Micro. 8 health. I mean, that Tempest is effectively DOA at this point. But Neeb is going to continue doubling down here on this this airplay. Oh, these Lings don't realize how good they've got it right now. That is a completely exposed base. He just doesn't touch it. Okay, Queens and Hydras are going to get a nice little concave on these air units, and that will allow him to continue staying aggressive here, but those Flux Veins is going to make this really, really difficult. Queens are going to stutter step forward, but good micro back and forth on those Voids to keep them alive as long as humanly possible, and they will just zoom on out of the way. Look how fast these go. Yeah, that Tempest is once again not going to be able to survive much longer, but he does retreat to the safety and comfort of that pocket of space. But SERRAL's finally going to bring the fight over to Neeb here. He has all of these units parked and ready to go. Way too much here. There's way too many Hydras, and there's nothing on the ground really to shut this down. Carrier's going to be able to help with this, but yeah, those Interceptors are not going to be in large enough quantities, even with a second carrier popping out here in just a moment. The Voids are actually the main threat, and finally now we see those upgrades of SERRAL completing here. Those Hydras just got a lot stronger, and their overwhelming number will continue to be a problem here for Neeb. Neeb doesn't have any response to this. He's just going to lose those Voids, and that's going to make everything vulnerable as SERRAL's able to clean up the matchup. 3-1 here in the round of 16. He advances on in his TSL7 path.